A drive-by shooting on the Las Vegas Strip.
Shakur was shot 4 times after leaving the Mike Tyson boxing match in Las Vegas in a car driven by Marion Suge Knight, the head of his label, Death Row Records.
A hip-hop star dead at the height of his fame, and then decades of silence and police investigations that led nowhere.
This trial has nothing to do with me. Leave me out of it.
This is a cold case that has hung over Nevada prosecutors for 3 decades. Now, 30 years after the murder of Tupac Shakur, one man, the only person to have ever been charged in this case, is standing trial. Dwayne Keffe D. Johnson is a 63-year-old alleged ex-gangster and shot caller in the Southside Compton Crips, and he's been charged with murder in the first degree. Now, he's entered a not guilty plea. But the thing is, 2 of the biggest pieces of evidence against Keffe D came from Keffe D.
There's no time frame on murders and deaths. And just because somebody's taken a long period of time, all of a sudden they don't just stop prosecuting the case. So if you understand their theory of the case, they're saying this happens all the way back from the mid-1990s, 1996. And in the 1990s in America, this is the birth of gangster rap. This is the birth of anger. These are the fights between the Crips and the Bloods going on, notorious back and forth between factions and agencies. And so what ended up happening is the thought process is this all started about a snatching of a chain of an individual who is related to Dwayne Keffe D. Davis. Dwayne was a notorious shot caller, big into the gang atmosphere, if you will. And one of his relatives, Orlando Anderson, is accused of being an individual who possibly stole a death row chain, stole a chain from somebody who was in Tupac's inner circle, if you will. And their theory is, as a result of the stealing of the chain from the inner circle, completely unrelated, there's a fight happening at the MGM, the Mike Tyson fight is happening. Tupac and his crowd see the individual who has stolen the chain from somebody, and the long and short is, they take the brakes off of him. They beat him severely. And after he gets his beating, he basically goes back and tells daddy, Dwayne Keffe D. Davis, tell everybody, I just got beat up by Tupac and his gang. And then, of course, what ends up happening, the theory is Dwayne Keffe D. Davis, everybody who is in his inner septum of this gang sees Tupac, Suge Knight, and that's why we're here. Like almost all cold cases, nobody's talking. There is no information. There is no evidence. And law enforcement is just like, what do we do? And they go and they sit down to talk to Dwayne Keffe D. Davis because in their minds, they've always believed he had something to do with the case. They always thought that he would know, given his history, given his relationship, given his high-ranking title in the gang world. And so when they sit down and talk to him, of course, initially he says, I'm not talking to y'all. I'm not telling them anything. So they do something called, they give him a proffer. They give him an agreement. They say to him, if you tell us everything you know, if you give us all the detail, we promise we will not use this against you. We will not come after you. But we have to solve this old crime, and we believe you know stuff about it. And then with that relationship, he said, okay, blah. He starts getting diarrhea of the mouth, if you will, and he just starts talking because he's like, I'm protected. Y'all can't use this against me. And he starts telling them everything that he knows.
Yeah, and the prosecution are alleging that during those interviews, he admits to being in the white Cadillac and tossing his gun in the back and is therefore the architect of this crime. But it isn't actually until that proffer agreement does hold until like 2018, 2019, when he opens his mouth again.
He starts yapping, writing books, go on podcasts, talking too much. That's the first time a creative prosecutor is like, look, he's already breached the proffer because he can't shut up. He is talking. And they went to the judge and said, Your Honor, we don't really need the proffer. We have his own words, but we want to use his own words and what he is saying on these podcasts together to help us in our trial.
So then the investigation is reopened. He's written this book in 2019, Compton Street Legend, where he claims to be in the white Cadillac and tossed his gun in the back. They reopen the investigation. They're trying to corroborate things that he said on these podcasts in his book. And then they get this nighttime search warrant in 2023 where they say they seize multiple pieces of evidence, including computers, cell phones, tubs of photographs, and a slew of Tupac-related material. His defense team have spoken about the book a lot, wanting it not to go in front of jurors, not to be presented in the courtroom. And the argument that they're giving is that not only was the book co-written, and he claims that he had a ghostwriter, so he didn't exactly know what was in there, but he also embellished or fictionalized elements of the book to help sell copies. But the judge shot that argument down.
Yeah, again, Dwayne Keffe D. Davis can't keep his mouth shut. And the judge pointed to something very important. He says, basically, you co-signed on the veracity of the book. And he's like, what do you mean I co-signed on the veracity? And the judge like hits play on the recording. This is you saying, hey man, everything in the book is true. Or do you want the real truth? Go read my book. So he says, you have co-signed on the veracity of the book. So the prosecutors can use that against you. He did not say it, but what's incumbent upon that is you still have every right to tell the jury that this is complete BS, that this is completely not true, that you were embellishing, that you don't know everything in it. But just because you want to say it's not true doesn't mean the prosecutors don't have the right to say it is true. So the judge says both of you can tell your story.
I think the next really confusing thing for people is the allegation from the prosecution is not that he fired the gun. So how could he be charged with murder in the first degree?
Yeah, so it is a nuanced theory, but it is used quite often. But the simplest way that they're going to explain it to the jury is something called the hand of one is the hand of all, also known as the act of one is the act of all. The example that we always give, Anushka, and I've given to you before, is if three people go and rob a bank, okay, and one of them says, you know what, I am the getaway driver. I will be driving the car. You guys promise nobody will be hurt? They're like, yep. And then Bob and Stanley go in tied. And Bob just says, everybody put your hands up. This is a robbery. And Stanley sneezes, achoo! And his gun goes off and he shoots somebody completely by accident. Well, everybody is liable for the one thing that that one person did. And that is literally the theory that the prosecution is going to be going with. Oh, Dwayne Keffe D. Davis, had you not taken that firearm and thrown it in the back seat, had you not been in the car, had you not been the notorious shot caller and encouraged these actions, we would not be here today. You are just as liable for anybody who fired the ultimate shot.
Now, as we know, Davis hasn't shied away from talking about this case. He's previously very famously accused rapper Sean Diddy Combs of offering $1 million for a hit on Tupac and Suge Knight. Now, this is an allegation that Combs has repeatedly denied. And recently, Keffe D has backtracked on what he said. Can he just get up on the stand and say, it wasn't me, Diddy did it?
The problem with that theory is the same thing with the hand of one, hand of all. If he offers that theory in the court, it's the same example as the guy who is the getaway driver. He is just saying that Sean Combs is the getaway driver. The other individual, he's the person who says, everybody put your hands up. And his relative, Orlando Anderson, might be the person who shot and sneezed. They're all the same under the hand of one, hand of all. So for him to be able to offer that doesn't help him, still lends to a conviction. And then we have something in the law called third-party guilt, Anushka, and we've talked about that. A lot of courts do not allow someone to just come randomly point the finger at somebody else without specific proof that it could have been this person who actually did it. So he'd have to offer actual proof that Diddy did it, and it'd have to be inconsistent with his guilt, and it's not. And I think he has now backed off that and said, you know what, I wasn't even in Vegas, but I know who did it if y'all ask me.
But there are some other famous names on the prosecution's witness list, most notably Suge Knight. Now, he is the only other person alive. He was driving the car that Tupac was in. So we had Keffe D allegedly in the white Cadillac and Suge driving the other car. Will he testify?
He would be the most dangerous witness. He would be Woody from the YSL trial. He would be the most dangerous witness in the history of the world. And he's all but said it. He says, whoever calls me and puts me on the stand is going to regret it. And that is true because he can say whatever he wants and there's nothing you can do. What are you going to do to a guy who's doing a 28-year bid? Hey, man, we're not going to give you your commissary. He don't care about honey buns and hot sausages. There's nothing that they can do to this man to force him to get on the stand to say anything because he is not looking at any charges. And the judge can't hold him in contempt, or the judge could hold him in contempt, but he's doing a 28-year sentence. It's the least he cares about. If, and I put the emphasis on the because that's also the letter I would use if he testified. He'd be, if he chose to take the stand, the cross-examination on him would be excoriating. It would be withering. It would be painful because there's so much information. I've said it to a million people. The worst thing that can happen to somebody are their own words coming back to bite them. 90% of the time, it's not the crime, it's the cover-up that wears people out. And his own words would be used as a necktie to choke the life out of him slowly, slowly, slowly. They're going to corroborate his own words with the tangible evidence. Like they'll use something in the book. In the book, you said, I would have been blah, blah, blah at this time, at this time, at this time. Well, here's the corroboration showing that this line in the book must be accurate because here is the footage.
Now, cold cases are hard enough to prosecute, but this one comes with its own set of extra challenges, namely finding a jury who don't already have their own theories about how Tupac died, or who haven't read Duane Davis's book, watched the podcast, listened to the interviews that he's still doing. This case is also unique because the defendant, Duane Keffe D. Davis, has said he will take the stand if needs be.
Are you covering the case? Are you going to be there in person? And are we going to get some daily updates? I'm actually curious. Inquiring Mind wants to know. People out of South Carolina want to know.
Yes, we're going to be there every day, just like we did for the Diddy trial. And us and every influencer and reporter on the planet are going to descend on the Las Vegas courtroom. And you can see the court are getting nervous because they keep sending emails going, maybe we will open a couple of overflow rooms. I'm like, you need to open the whole building. This is going to be like the Diddy trial, take two.